All right, let's talk about a term you've probably heard thrown around, one that's usually wrapped up in all kinds of mystery: Masonic light. Now, this idea was a real engine for the Enlightenment, and it's at the very heart of Freemasonry. But to really truly get what it means, we have to go back in time. We have to understand the world that it came from. So let's get into it.
So what is Masonic light anyway? You might be thinking it's some kind of weird mystical secret, or maybe even a religious thing. But the real answer? It's so much bigger than that. And believe me, it has nothing to do with secret handshakes. It has everything to do with the idea of knowledge itself.
Okay, first things first, let's just get this out of the way. Freemasonry is not a cult. It's not some kind of secret church. Masonic light is really a metaphor, a powerful one, for the journey we all take towards wisdom. And that idea was absolutely revolutionary, all because of the darkness it was designed to push back against.
And this quote from Arlo Guthrie, it just perfectly captures what we're talking about here. To really appreciate the light of the Enlightenment, the light of Masonry, we have to first understand the shadows. We got to take a step back into the world that existed before.
You've probably heard this period called the Dark Ages, right? Well, it was dark for a very specific reason, and it wasn't a lack of sunshine. It was about the complete and total control of information. For most people, it was an age of forced ignorance.
I mean, just look at the slide. It lays out the world as it was, and it was basically a two-tiered system. On one side, you had the clergy and the nobility. They had everything. They owned the land, they held the power, and most importantly, they had an iron grip on information. And on the other side, you had pretty much everyone else, the common serf, who had, well, nothing.
And let's be really clear about what being a serf actually meant. This wasn't just being a poor farmer. It meant that you and your entire family were literally the property of the land. If a lord sold his land, you were part of the deal. There was no climbing the ladder, no getting an education, no way out. It was a fixed system, and you were at the very bottom.
So how did the people in power keep this system going? Well, it was all built on keeping knowledge locked away. You see, after Rome fell, so much ancient wisdom just disappeared. Reading and writing became skills that only priests and monks had. Books themselves were unbelievably rare and valuable. Each one had to be copied by hand. A single Bible could cost more than an entire house. And here's the kicker. Even if you could get your hands on one, it was in Latin, a language that nobody outside the church could understand. This made the church the ultimate gatekeeper of truth.
King Alfred the Great really hit the nail on the head here. The foundation of this whole system, the very essence of the darkness of the age, was ignorance. But that was all about to change, thanks to a single world-shattering invention.
And this is where the story completely flips on its head. Let's talk about the machine that basically broke the medieval world.
Picture this. It's around the year 1450. In a small workshop in Germany, a guy named Johann Gutenberg is messing around with some new ideas. And what he comes up with is going to light a fuse that will set off a revolution.
Now, Gutenberg's genius was in its simplicity. Instead of carving a whole page of text from wood, he made individual letters out of metal, movable type. Then he created a new kind of oil-based ink that stuck to cheaper paper, not just pricey animal skin. And he put it all together with a press, kind of like a wine press, that could create a perfect, clear copy every single time. All of a sudden, making a book went from taking years to being something you could do over and over, quickly and cheaply.
Now, I know this sounds a little dramatic, but it's not an exaggeration. For the old world, for that system built on keeping people in the dark, the printing press was a weapon of mass destruction. It shattered the monopoly on knowledge. It put the power of ideas right into the hands of ordinary people, and the result was absolute chaos.
Because once information was out there, people started to question everything, especially the one thing that had controlled every aspect of their lives: religion. And this didn't lead to some peaceful, happy enlightenment. Oh no. It led to centuries of brutal, bloody war.
This timeline of what happened in England just shows you how insane it was. I mean, just try to imagine being a regular person living through this. One decade, your king says, okay, we're Protestant now, and being a Catholic is a crime. A few years later, a new queen takes the throne, and suddenly being Protestant will get you burned alive. Then it flips back again. The thing that was most personal to you, your faith, was turned into a political weapon, and choosing the wrong side could get you and your family killed.
So here's the big takeaway from that period. For 200 years, Europe was just tearing itself apart.
You had Catholics, Protestants, and all these different groups of Protestants, and every single one of them was convinced that they had the only true path to God, and they were all more than willing to kill for it. It's out of that fire, that bloodshed, that a brand new idea about how to build a society was born.
And this is where Freemasonry comes into the story. It wasn't just a social club. It was a direct answer to the chaos, a radical new kind of safe space.
Inside the walls of a Masonic lodge, they came up with two incredibly simple but revolutionary rules. Rule number 1, you could not discuss religion. Rule number 2, you could not discuss politics. Now think about that for a second. The two things that were ripping the world to shreds were the very two things you weren't allowed to talk about. This made the lodge maybe the only place in all of Europe where men on opposite sides of these bloody wars could actually meet in peace.
And this little story just shows how mind-blowing this was at the time. A French spy snuck into a lodge and sent a report back to his king, and he was totally stunned by what he saw. He saw a Jew, a Catholic, and a Protestant all sitting together. He saw a doctor next to a merchant, next to a black trumpeter, all as equals. And what really blew his mind was that they weren't bowing to some nobleman. No, they were electing their leaders from among themselves, based on who was best for the job, not who their father was.
What was happening here was the birth of a whole new kind of group, what you might call the thinking class. For the first time, you had a community that wasn't held together by a shared religion or a royal bloodline. It was held together by a shared passion for learning, for reason, and for seeking out knowledge just for the sake of it.
So all of that history, all of that chaos and revolution brings us full circle. It brings us right back to our original question about the real meaning of this journey from darkness to light. So in the end, Masonic light isn't just about collecting facts or being smart. It's about what you do with that knowledge. It's about using the power that comes with knowing things with justice, with wisdom, and, this is the most important part, with tolerance for people who believe differently than you. It's a commitment to a journey that never really ends.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question. See, we don't live in a world with too little information anymore. We live in a world of information overload. And we are just as divided today by our politics and our ideologies as people back then were by their religions. So the real question for us is, how do we apply this lesson now? How do we use the incredible access to knowledge we all have, not to build bigger walls between us, but to continue that same essential journey toward wisdom and tolerance? That's something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.